Hello and welcome to the Baseball Wisconsin podcast. I'm your host, Tim Gotzler. All right, we made it to the fourth inning of Game 8, where we sit down with head baseball coach at Muskego High School, Jake Paige. Now, if my records are correct, Jake is the only coach in state history to win a state championship in the summer and in the spring. Now, I've known Jake for a long time. We used to coach against each other in the same conference in the Classic 8. Actually played baseball at Cardinal Stritch University. We never crossed paths, but played for the same coach. Watching him coach Muskego for years has been outstanding. Again, I watched him win a state championship in 2018, and then this past year in Spring Division 1 in 2025. Two crazy games, by the way. Anyways, besides the point, just talking some Muskego baseball, all the preseason stuff that's going to come out, all the talent, kind of the Muskego model that seems to be across the state of Wisconsin in athletics, kind of the, up near the top programs. I want to watch my words here, but they just seem to have it rolling in many different sports, and it's a community that's growing, it's investing, that has facilities, and Jake has been on the ground floor of all that. He's a resident, obviously a coach. He's been there for a long time, had a tremendous amount of success. So hear about 2025, the season that was, looking into 26, program building, managing expectations, and there's so many things in this episode that are just fantastic. So without further ado, head baseball coach at Muskego High School, Jake Paige. All right, Coach, how you doing today?
Good, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Hey, for the listeners, why don't you give us a background in baseball? Where'd you grow up? What's your journey as a player and getting into teaching and coaching?
Sure, absolutely. I'm born and raised in West Dallas. Could not have grown up in a better baseball community. There's a great Little League program. Back then, you played on the same team for 4 years. So from 9 to 12, you're on the same team. So everybody's technically playing up for 3 years. Just a great experience there. If not playing Little League in organized way, everyone's at the playground, kind of old school stuff, like just show up and play. I lived within walking distance of County Stadium, spent a lot of time there. Really can't remember a time where I didn't love the game. I went to West Dallas Central High School, played for Coach Dan Gaynor, another great experience, and I learned a lot. And from there, I went to Cardinal Stritch, played 4 years there, and then for the West Dallas Nationals for 3 seasons after that. From there, Coach Gaynor actually gave me my first opportunity in coaching when I was just 23 years old as his varsity assistant. That was really my first behind the scenes look of what it took to run a baseball program. And his attention to detail is something that I still take with me now, even this many years later. And I went to West Dallas Hale for 1 year where I could coach head coach of the freshman team, which led me to Oak Creek, where I did 1 year as a varsity assistant and then 4 as the JV coach. And that was incredibly valuable. And there's no doubt that experience there not only prepared me, but led me directly to Muskego, where I've been now for 16 years.
All right, so before we get to Muskego and your coaching days, go back to your playing days. Now, I'm repping some Stritch Wolves gear myself today on College Wear Wednesday on the podcast call, but the listeners only get to hear the audio. But what kind of player were you? And do you feel like your playing style, maybe carries over to what type of coach you are? So why don't you give us a scouting report on you as a player?
Sure. I guess I would categorize myself more as a glove first player, shortstop and third base. Offensively, I'm sure the book would have been so I hit lefty, I would be shade me a little bit to go the other way. More of a contact singles, doubles guy. Got into one every once in a while, but that was few and far between. And I think it doesn't impact my coaching. Because I think I was always very aware of my strengths and limitations. And I try to get guys to understand that now. How can we use your strength to not only help our team, but to help you build as a baseball player? And what are those limitations? And how can we build those up where maybe you can turn something into a strength to make yourself a little bit more well-rounded?
Well, and I think that's the piece of, playing college baseball, finding that puzzle piece. I think a lot of guys, myself included, you go into college baseball, whatever level you play at, you think you know a lot, you get punched in the mouth pretty quickly by that fall, come home at Thanksgiving pretty humbled. And then over time, you got to level up or else the game passes you by pretty quickly. And then you learn lessons along the way. You get into coaching, you get into teaching. Eventually, you take a head job. Muskego 2011. Go back to those early days. Like as you reflect on what was your style and how have you grown as a leader in this role since then?
Sure. Well, when I first started, I mean, I did not even have um, necessarily aspirations to be a head coach yet. And I'd been in Oak Creek then for 5 years, and the Muskego job opened, and um, I just decided to give it a shot. And to be honest, I didn't realize how much I wanted it until I started the interview process. And once I kind of got in there, and the questions that were being asked, and I could see where this might lead and the impact that I could have as a program leader, really excited me. So when that worked out, and I got into it a little bit, I did have to rely on all of my past experiences, from working with Coach Gaynor, and then of course Scott Holler at Oak Creek, and taking things from there and trying to apply them in my own way. And so many positive things from both of them. And I guess I was a little bit um, unaware of some of the expectations that come along with it, because you don't really know until you know. Um, so I had to really learn what that was like to not only manage like a team, but a program. And then, of course, the expectations of the school, the community, and the parent involvement, and things like that. So it was definitely those first couple years, especially, was really a lot of learning, and a lot of lessons learned as well. But at the same time, I also had a strong staff that helped me through a lot of that, and guys that I could count on. So very positive experience, but also one that I learned a lot too.
Well, I go back and think about, just that probably that time in your personal life, right? You still pretty young. When people hear those questions, they think, "Oh yeah, I didn't know much about baseball. I thought I knew it all, but I didn't know this drill or that drill." I think of more of like as a leader, more as now, who you are. You married, you have kids, you have a different perspective now. The community has grown so much. You've grown into that role so much. And I'm sure you probably have some of those, cringe look back moments of how you handled situations like we all do. And I think anybody who's reflective on their younger self, some of that growth just you have to go through. But you've been at Muskego for this time and watched Muskego grow to, the brand that it is now, as an athletic department, as a community, and obviously as a baseball program. So maybe like give us a little bit of peek under the hood. When you got to Muskego athletics, when you got to Muskego baseball, what was the state of the program? Again, they weren't a nobody, right? They had a tremendous amount of success, but there's levels to this. Where was it, and now kind of what are you looking at now, numbers wise, facilities wise, across the state and across the Midwest and maybe even the country, people are looking at Muskego as a model program, just of athletics, and then within in individual programs as well.
Sure. When I first got to Muskego, just from a baseball perspective, they were coming off some years of some high level success. I think they were sectional finals the year before I got there. When I came in, it was a very unique situation, kind of similar to the one we're going to have this season. There were a lot of seniors the year before I got there, so they were senior loaded. So a lot of the players on my first team didn't have very much varsity experience. Um, so that was a learning experience in itself. Um, and then from there, though, I think the numbers that just continue to grow in terms of coming out for baseball year after year, just continue to get greater and greater. And the athletic department as a whole has really grown a lot in my time there. The facilities we have now, we're very, very blessed to have what we have. We have that indoor facility now. Um, from a baseball perspective, we have a full infield inside. We have drop down cages, plenty of space to really run a full practice outside of live hitting on a baseball field in any conditions. So we're very lucky from that standpoint. Um, the community has also worked really hard for a lot of fundraising for our field to move into turf and some other advantages now that we have out at our outdoor space, and just the involvement of our administration, both in the athletic department and beyond, to make sure that athletics is a priority along with all the other activities that can be offered in a high school. And to have that backing, I really think says a lot about just the high school and the community as a whole.
All right. So the other thing that I know about you is you're also a resident there. So you are seeing this from different angles as well. And I mean, I'm really intrigued on this question. Like, as a resident, obviously you're biased, you're a coach, you're a sports guy, but like, how did they market that to the community? Because it looks like, from outsider looking in, that the whoever the decision makers were, they were selling this vision, not just in baseball, not just in football, not just in volleyball or soccer or basketball, but as a net positive, as an asset to an entire community. How did they do that so effectively?
I think they also tied it into a lot of the academic space too, because along with building of the facility, they also built like STEM areas within the high school, and um, even more than that. And selling the athletic part was more about training an athlete, not necessarily training a student athlete for a specific sport. So when you tied into the weight room and all the things that went into the facility, it was just about a well-rounded student athlete, not just for one specific sport. And honestly, the facility is used by pretty much every program. It's really hard to even get time in there sometimes because all programs are using it. Yes, there's advantages to certain teams that are outside and now can come inside, but every program uses it. And I think the community was behind it because youth programs can come in there, and it's used for multiple purposes.
Well, and classic educational buzzword, stakeholders. You get as many stakeholders as
Mhm.
possible that can get eyes on it, can get inside of it, can bring their kids in there, and it just builds a buzz. It builds positivity. And you talked about the youth programs, and the youth baseball scene in Muskego has just blown up in so many different spaces. And eventually, though, all roads lead to ninth grade. Whatever youth program they come from or travel team they play on, eventually they walk into your doors at ninth grade. And that's where, your role steps into a little bit more. And I'm sure you're involved in the youth programs and all the meetings that go with that coaches are aware of. But once they get in your building, 9 through 12, give us a little bit of a flyover view of, what does tryouts look like? How many kids are showing up? How do you guys structure it? What's the blueprint at Muskego?
Yeah. So our numbers are pretty good. We've averaged probably about 75 to 80 kids here the last few years. Um, and when they do show up in ninth grade, very honestly, it doesn't matter to us what youth program they're coming from. I know that sometimes it can be viewed as, oh, this program has an advantage over that program, and I mean, you know this, and as do all coaches. Like, doesn't matter if they're coming in, they know that they can play and they're going to represent you and your program the way you want it to be represented. Doesn't matter where they played in eighth grade or seventh grade or even before that. Um, but in terms of tryouts, yeah, we have about 75 to 80 players. Um, every single player gets 3 sessions over a course of 4 days. So we run tryouts for 4 days. Every kid will be there for at least three of them. On day one, we bring everybody in at their age level. Unless you're a returning varsity player, then you'll come with the older kids. But otherwise, you'll be with your class. After day one, if we want to see you in a different way and maybe move you up to see what it's going to compare with some of the older guys, we do that for day three, 2, 3, and 4. Um, Always making sure that we communicate with the guys that we bring up. Like if we bring up 5 sophomores to the varsity tryout after day one, we make sure to talk to them and let them know that if you're not on the varsity team, that doesn't mean you got cut from varsity. We're just trying to give different looks to you, and just give everybody an idea of what we're all looking at here. And then after the fourth day, of course, you have the hardest part in coaching and making those tough decisions.
All right, so now we're getting into the nitty gritty, and I love it. And obviously, facilities and weather and everything else dictates a variety of this. But when you guys run your tryouts, you're evaluating that many players. Um, what's the structure? Do you do more of like a, skill and drill, more of a showcase, um, some live at bats? Like, how do you structure those 3, 4 days just to make sure you're given a real good look? Because, like you said, you're making these decisions, and those who have larger programs like you guys, you just know that, man, it's close. Some of these roster spots are so tight.
Right. And that's the challenge, is to make sure that we give enough reps where we can see everything that we possibly need to, and give every kid that equal opportunity over those 3 sessions. So I would say it's more of a skill and drill, but then we also then do live at bats. So um, what we've done the last few years now is kind of isolate offense and defense into separate days, those first couple days, and if that way we can get more than one round of everything in one day. And then we'll come back the third day and try to do everything at once, just in a shorter, more efficient way. Um, I think and I hope that what that eliminates is any talk of like, well, that he just had one bad day in the cage, or this guy had one phenomenal day on defense, but then that was it. Now we get to see him multiple times doing everything, and can help us with making the best decisions. And again, we're not perfect, but at the same time, I think we give ample opportunity, and everybody gets a lot of looks, so we can make the best decisions we can.
Well, and I think you hit on so many things before. I wish I went back to this. I mean, I don't know how many parents listen to this show of the millions of downloads that we have, but I think parents often have a misconception that, hey, if I don't play for fill in the blank program, I'll never make the high school. My high school coach plays politics and only takes kids from this program, and that's not true. I know that's not true, and I think the more and more we can say that, I think is helpful, and be kind of on the record publicly saying that, because at the end of the day, whatever color hat they have on coming to tryouts, they're Muskego Warriors. They're in your building, they're your guys, and they got to get involved in your culture. The second piece I think about with your tryout situation is you got to have a great staff, because this isn't just a Jake Paige decision. This is an entire program decision, and maybe you have to deliver the message, and your name's at the top of the program. So you got to have a great assistance. I want to hear about those. And then number two, an administration that supports you, because I talked to some coaches who only have 25 kids come out for baseball. Well, you're not in that situation. You have to make some really difficult decisions, and I'm sure your AD gets phone calls and emails just like you do right away. So talk about your assistants and your staff, top to bottom, and then talk about the power of a supportive administration.
Sure. Number one, with the assistants, I mean, and this, like, I mean, to have trusted coaches along with you is absolutely priceless. And I do have that. I've been fortunate enough to have that my entire time there. Um, I've had Kyle Pakowitz since the second I walked in the door at Muskego High School, and he's been by my side, and we have done things together this whole time. Um, and then another example, and I won't go down the list because that'll take this whole time, but it would be Josh Brider, who I think you know. Um, he played for us for 3 years, and now he's entering his 10th year coaching. And it's always cool when guys that you've coached have come back and now have been part of the staff, especially for that long. But to have guys like that, where you can trust not only to be running some things at tryouts, but also to be true evaluators. So when you do come back together and you have to make those decisions, you can do it together, because I am not going to see exactly everything that they see, and vice versa. And when we can have those conversations and I can trust that what they're saying, and that can be factored into the decision making, um, that's more than helpful. And of course, like you said, in the end, I'm going to get the email or the phone call, and that's fine. That comes with the territory. But to know that I can be even more confident in the decision that we've made because it's been collective. That just helps me with my conversations with those parents. Because again, we do owe them an explanation of the evaluation and how we see things. And more often than not, if we provide that clear communication, the conversation goes well, and the kids get feedback that they can hopefully use to better themselves as a baseball player.
When I heard this phrase years ago, and I think it rings true in every situation, but especially this one, like every coach is one parent or one administrator away from making their life miserable. And when you have a good group of players and families and an administration who supports you, um, like don't ever take it for granted, right? And it seems like if you want to dig into administration a little bit and that leadership piece, because your administrative team, again, outsider looking in, has a tremendous amount of experience. The programs have had so much success within that building. They can feed off each other. I really believe that successful programs lead to other successful programs, and winnings kind of in the water. So maybe touch on just what else is going on administratively or other coaches within that building, lessons that you've learned.
Sure. I have been more than lucky with the athletic directors now that I've worked for. The first one, Scott Kuge, who put me through the hiring process, and then now Ryan McMillan. So could not have asked for more supportive administrators, and that comes in many different ways. One is neither one ever micromanaged, and I think that's valuable too, because especially when I first started and coming in young, you have to learn some lessons on your own. You just do, and if you learn it the hard way, you learn it the hard way. But I was given the leeway to kind of to do that, um, and and now that I've been there for a while, I feel like there's a trust there, and to have the trust of your administrator means the world, because that gives you the confidence to go out to do what you know that or that you feel is right, but know that you have the backing um, of your boss at the same time. And and that's just not just for me. I've seen that with Ryan now throughout the entire athletic department, and I think there's such great respect for him, where he has what he has done with the facilities, how he's valued every sport. um, he was a football coach before he arrived here, and um, for him to use his experience as a coach now to apply that to an entire athletic department and making sure that all sports are valued, everyone is getting equal time, is just something that I don't think happens everywhere. So I think we've been really lucky.
That's outstanding. I appreciate that. I think that now, okay, so teams are made, the hardest conversations have been had, emails are flying, and now you get into your season, right? You have your teams, you got your varsity squad in front of you, get your coaches ready to go, you're in practices, game mode. Um, you know, what, how would you describe your leadership style? How would you describe, you got to lead this group. We'll get into expectations and all that stuff eventually with talent and championships and all the success you've had. But like, how would you describe your leadership style?
I guess mine would be more of a every year is like a different start. So for me, it's starting from square one, that we haven't accomplished anything yet, and I think as a leader, you kind of have to. You're the one that kind of has to um, like plug the holes, so to speak, and see where things need to be addressed, and maybe when is it time for you to speak? When is it time for the team to take over? When do the kids need a different voice from an assistant coach? So I guess my style would be more one of um, like collective leadership as our staff. And I do rely on the coaching staff a lot. Everybody has a different role, and I think my role is more of um, to make sure that we just stay on track and focus of what's important and what we can control, and then the rest kind of takes care of itself from there.
Well, just being across the dugout from you for years and watching you guys play and your teams, like, and tell me if I'm wrong with this observation, but you're a very competitive guy. I think we all are. That's probably one of the reasons we're in this. But also, I think your stoicism, I think your ability to stay, in the moment, level-headed, allows your teams to stay in the moment, level-headed. I really believe that the players take on the mannerisms and the attitude of their coach. And I think about, I've watched you win two state championships, right? The last one in summer of 2018, and how that game played out and just the drama. And then in 2025 in Appleton. And I often put myself in your shoes. And I think, am I reacting the same way? Am I as steady? And maybe inside it's killing you and your heart rate's pumping. But man, you're like your aura about you just kind of there. You're the same guy all the time. Is that something that's just your natural leadership style? Talk us through those situations.
Sure. I think that's a little bit, like you say, my natural leadership style is a little bit more to stay even keel. Um, I've always, that's one of the things I think I've learned over time is like, um, as a coach, it's not always as maybe as tough as it seems, and it's not maybe always as great as it seems too. You kind of have to find that middle ground. And I'm not going to lie, there are times inside that maybe wouldn't match what the outside looks like. Um, but at the same time, like as a leader, you have to show that you're in the moment. If there's panic or if there's unsureness within how we're carrying ourselves as coaches, that's clearly going to bleed into the dugout. And that's the last thing we want is when you have, and I know some of these kids are high level athletes, but they're still kids, right? So they're going to still, whether they're going to admit it or not, they're going to see how are my coaches reacting to the situation, and it is going to affect them. And the more we can stay even keel and positive with whatever is happening, to me, that can only benefit the guys.
The other thing I want to throw at you is you got guts. Like you've made calls in games that I think guys would be scared to make. I've watched you put a suicide squeeze on to win a state championship, essentially. I've watched you make a pitching change many throughout a game when you just felt like things weren't going your way. Like I think, you got to have the courage to make those decisions. Like, heavy's the head that wears the crown. So like, when you're going through the decision making process, are you just a gut feel type of guy? Is that a conversation with some of your trusted staff? Because I think that's something that you do really well.
I appreciate that. I'd have to say it's a mixture of both. Um, the gut ones, I have to be honest, I go with those more often than not because to me, over the course of my time here as the head coach, it's always bothered me more if something didn't work out when I didn't do something that I kind of had an inkling to do, whereas the other way around. Because if and I've gone with my gut before and it hasn't worked out. I think we all have, but I can live with that as opposed to, oh, I should have done this. That bothers me more. So I think that's kind of where that comes from. Um, and some of it, again, you just learn so much over time, just not only about yourself, but just like how to approach the game too. And I feel like, speaking of being in the moment, if you have that inkling when you're in a big situation in the game, you're in that moment right there. You don't have time to overanalyze, which sometimes, honestly, I do. So, like, it's almost like those are, I'm not going to say easier, but I think I'm more in tune when I have to make those quick decisions rather than step back and be like, analyze it to death. So, I think that's where some of that comes from.
That's outstanding. No, I really appreciate that. And I think guys who are around the game, ball players, people who really study the game, they have a feel. Every game has a feel. I mean, you can't describe it, but every game, every situation has a feel. And I think that's something you learn over time. And I'm not against data. I'm not against the other things that go on in the game. I know it's a big part of where we're at every level, but that doesn't tell the story all the time of what's actually happening at that moment. Anyways, you alluded to this earlier, and I wanted to get there. You have had a tremendous amount of success, and I believe the only coach in state history to win a state championship in the summer and now in the spring. You've had this talent pool that continues to come through, incredible facilities, And but I want you to talk about managing expectations. If it's from players, from outside groups, rankings, again, agents and coaches, like how do you manage those expectations? Because that is a true skill.
Well, it's a different world right now. That's for sure from when I started almost 16 years ago now, and we are in a very unique space right now in Muskego. We do have a high level of talent currently, and there are expectations not only for the team but for those individuals. And like I said just a few minutes ago, they're still kids. So yes, you look at them and um, they're grown men and they've got these great opportunities ahead of them. But um, ultimately, though, they're still 16, 17, 18 years old, still trying to figure things out. So part of that is just part of all of it is just understanding um, what they are going through. And yes, it's all fun, and a lot of people love to be in their shoes, but there's still a lot of pressure that comes with that. And um, when it comes to the team expectations, like for example, going into last year, every time we turned around, there was some kind of publication about a player or our team is going to be preseason number one here and preseason number one there. And don't get me wrong, that's all fun. And anytime you can have positive things said about your program, of course you love hearing those things. Um, Typically, we don't address like team rankings and things. Last year, we felt we had to, um, and the reason we decided to do that is because sometimes I feel like a lot of these rankings are based on talent, not necessarily team. So that was like a focus of conversation for us right after tryouts. One of our first team meetings was you see a one next to Muskego in March really doesn't mean anything. Yes, it's some level of respect given to you for what you could be, but ultimately they're saying that there's a lot of talent here, but having great talent does not equate to great team all the time. So we had to address that, and I think that hit home for some of our guys that yeah, I might be this really good player and I have a lot to look forward to, but at the same time, how do I use that to help our team? And I do think it took a little time. We got off to a 500 start the first ten games or so, and I do believe that was part of it. Like everybody thought they had to do everything because of the expectations and because of what was being said about them. And once we kind of took a step back and just decided that we were just going to be us and not have to worry about um, what articles being written about what school I might go to, and we started to play team ball. That's when it really kind of took off.
All right, this is exactly where I wanted you to go. Walked right in the spider web. People look okay. The people who aren't paying attention, they see, all right, Muskego preseason number one in 2025, and they see them hoisting the gold ball. They think, well, of course, you just play your season, and of course you're going to win. You got all this talent. The rankings were right the whole time, and then you start talking about we're 500 through 10 games. A lot of things are happening, and this is where like coaching, the art of coaching, right? Like if it's leadership within the players, within the coaching staff, but there's turning points in every season. Every season has a story, and definitely every championship season has a story. Um, are there moments in time you can think of last year when a conversation, a game, a pregame, a postgame, a practice were moments that like were turning points for you guys?
I wouldn't pick out one specifically, but I do think that it was after that 10-12 game mark where we were taking a step back and saying, well, these were all the things that were being said, and we are sitting where we are. What is it going to take to make that adjustment? And yes, clearly there are a lot of talent on the team. But like I said earlier, that doesn't mean it's going to be a great team because when there is talent on the team, there's also needs to be sacrifice. And if you don't have that, you are going to be a 500 baseball team. And we're lucky that we have talented players that got to the point where they realized sacrificing is okay. Um, there's nothing that I need to do today that's going to improve my stock for this situation or for that scout over here. Um, Playing team baseball is going to get us to where we want to go. And to their credit, they understood that if I accept my role, even if I am sacrificing a little bit, that is best for the team. And guess what? Going to Appleton, you are going to get some more looks there. So if that's still in the back of your mind, putting yourself in those big games is still going to help you as an individual. And I think when we got to that point, about a third of the way through the season, um, guys just decided, you know what, I'm going to be unselfish and I'm going to play my role and I'm going to be the best at what I'm asked to do. And I know that kind of sounds like coach speak, um, but it's really what happened. And once we got to that point, it was fun to watch because now we have guys truly rooting for each other, even if they're competing for playing time or at bats or whatever the case might be. Truly wanting success for the guy sitting next to them, and and I'm sorry, I don't think you can win if you don't have that, at least not at a high level.
Man, and that's what I was just going to ask you. Like coach speak, right? Coaches say the right things. We need to be the best teammate possible, selfless. But like then there's actions that have to happen between 16, 17, 18-year-old boys. And I was going to ask you, like, what did you see in their behavior that showed, okay, they're in? Like the unselfishness is starting to show and shine a light on that. So do you have any other examples? Because I think this is a great learning lesson for anybody who's listening to this show.
Sure. So we had, I would say, a couple positions that maybe were clogged a little bit, where guys wanted a little bit more playing time and a few more opportunities. And um, early on in the year, if they weren't in the starting lineup, you might have seen some body language. Um, nothing like, again, we had a great group. There's nothing that was bringing everybody down, but it's obvious though, when someone's disappointed and um, they have buddies on the team, so I'm sure it's being talked about, and it could cause a problem. Um, but then as the year kind of went on, and they kind of saw what we were trying to do, we were trying to find specific roles for those that might not have been everyday starters. And I think what happened was it was more of like a trust in the coaching staff eventually, because once things started to turn around, um, and they saw the value they were bringing, even if it wasn't on um, an inning by inning basis by playing 7 innings a game and getting 3, 4 at bats. Maybe it was as a defensive replacement. Maybe it was you're going to have to be a reliever for us right now, or I need you on the bases in these situations. Once we've kind of like accepted that, that's when, like I said, we kind of took off, and you didn't see that body language anymore. You started hearing more chatter from the dugout. Um, all those things just kind of came together as like the perfect storm, and that doesn't happen all the time. Like guys don't sit for a third of the year and then accept a, a smaller role, even though it's just as valuable as anybody else's.
Well, and I think you're hitting right on the head. Like for a lot of kids and a lot of programs, varsity baseball at their high school might be the first time that they've ever sat or not hit in the order where they wanted to or been in the rotation where they wanted to. Because every other level that they play, for right or for wrong, has been maybe scripted for them. And I know you have a great relationship with club coaches, as do I, and the academies. They do an incredible job developing players, but the model is so different, right? And even when we coached summer baseball a long time ago, we played many more games. Non-conference games were kind of sometimes seen as like, I don't want to say throwaway games, but like you kind of got kids in, hey, doubleheader on a Saturday, whatever happens, happens. And with 26 games, with weather, with all the things, there's not that many innings available. Like you just don't. In pro ball, it's pretty scripted. Who's going to play what? Everyone's going to play every week. Travel ball, 5 games this weekend at some tournament. You're going to start in 3 of them. High school, none of that's guaranteed, right? Varsity, like you don't have charity playing time. So nipping those things in the bud is really tough to do. And I think one of your skills is you have the feel, like when your dugout's off, when the vibes are off. You've been doing this long enough, but when it's right. And once you get all pulling in the same direction, you can do some amazing things. Well, it all sounds good, and then you get to the postseason, get through your conference season, you get your seed, you get in the postseason. We were talking before we recorded. You got to win level 7. You got me still?
Yep. Yep.
Sorry, you got to win level 7. You got to win the 7th game of the playoffs. I mean, I think that might be the deepest run you have to make in all of Wisconsin sports to win a state championship. Different topic. Long story short, how do you continue to progress through a postseason with just the format, a regional, 2 games at a sectional, and then like 3 separate games in Appleton?
Right. And that's where that part we talked about before about having gut feeling as opposed to like taking a step back and planning. So it's just a different mindset. It's almost like a start over. No matter, and yes, we were playing our best baseball at the end of the regular season. There's no question about it. But at the same time, when you're playing in a one and done tournament, especially in baseball, you have to kind of reset, because all those things that you may have relied on in the regular season, there still wasn't that pressure of, if we lose, that's it. And so there does have to be like a change of mindset a little bit, because there is pressure. Let's be honest, there is pressure. Every ground ball, there's pressure. There's pressure. One mistake here or there can change everything. And going into it, part of our practices leading up to that are focusing on like those little things again. And I'm sure many programs do that, but you have to communicate with your guys that they can't take anything for granted. We say every pitch, every play throughout the year, but it just means something different when you get to the playoffs. And at the same time, though, if you can use that pressure and turn it into more of like looked at as an opportunity, that's when I think like the kids really buy in, because now pressure is almost like a negative like way to look at it. Like, oh, I'm going to go out there, I better not make a mistake, rather as this is an opportunity for me to do something really cool that might help my team and lead us to something really fun.
And throughout the postseason, right, you get into, a variety of games. Like I said, then you get to the state championship. You get the state championship Thursday, right? And that whole day, all leads up to the Division I final. You get to a Division I final, the best laid plans, you're on plan A, plan B, you go down to your list. Maybe talk us through that day as you kind of think about, all ends with the dog pile and the trophy, but there's so much more to that story. So talk us through Championship Thursday for you.
Sure. I don't think I can give the full picture of Thursday without just backtracking just a little bit, because the night before, I don't know if a lot of people realize that weren't there. We had hours and hours of rain delay, so we didn't even start our game until the time we probably should have been back home, because we traveled back and forth each day. So we played a very, very tough Hartford team the night before. We came back late in that game, and it was questionable, literally to the last out. But we were able to survive that, and then we drove all the way home, and we got home about 12:30, and we reported back the next day at noon. So it was a very quick turnaround, and they showed up though, and there wasn't really much talk. Like, we had a team meeting before every time we rode the bus or hopped on the bus, and this one there wasn't much. There wasn't much to say. There wasn't much to talk about, because everybody just knew, and we were at the game that we wanted to be at. So you didn't have to talk about it. You didn't have to talk strategy. Everybody just wanted to get there. Then arriving there that day, we had to wait a little bit. The game before us took a little bit longer, the Division II game. So that was the longest part. I will say that was worse than the bus ride. It was just waiting for that other game to end. And then we did have a plan, but like you said, you have a plan until it starts, and then you have to adjust. So we were we thought we were pretty good still with our pitching. We used our top couple guys the first couple nights, and um, we realized that Badger did not have to throw their ace in game one, the full um, the 100 pitches, so he was available. So we knew what was in front of us, and we knew it was a tall task. Um, Going in though with warm-ups, everybody was ready. We were confident, but this team, um, although confident, also I think was able to channel a lot of that energy into making sure they stayed with the task that was in front of them. And I think that day we didn't play our best baseball, um, and I think Badger would play the same, would say the same. It wasn't the cleanest game, but that's kind of expected, I guess, at that point, with all that had gone into that week for both teams. But we just made enough plays at the end and had enough good at bats at the end to pull one through. And speaking of roles, we talked about this earlier about guys wanting bigger roles. Um, the last the last 16 outs, I believe not 16. Last 12, I think last 12, we brought in a pitcher named Jake Cardelis, who had a couple starts for us during the year. He had a lot of innings, mostly in relief. Um, and he got that opportunity to come in that game, and he went 12 up, 12 down. So if there's not a better example of um, sacrifice and being a part of the team and something bigger than yourself, then I don't know what is, because what he did for us in that game as somebody that wasn't maybe a focal starter throughout the season and maybe one of those innings and could have been one of those guys that um, brought others down and didn't and stayed up himself and stayed ready. I think that's just a great example of what our season was really all about.
Well, and then now you got that story to tell for years and years to come, and Jake gets to be, have that memory, and that's part of his legacy in your program. And as everyone's storming the field, did you get a chance to take a moment to kind of take it all in before the media and your family and everybody came out? Talk us through that moment that you had when it was finally wrapped up.
Yeah, I did, and I was able to kind of like take a step back um, and watch them pile on the field. That's a cool thing. It's so, and you know this, it's so fun to watch your players who some you've had for many years enjoy that success. And yes, I know that winning isn't always like the most important thing that comes with the coaching and the whole experience. But when you do get that chance and watch all that emotion come out, and you can really see what it means to everybody, that's a cool moment. And I was able to stand there. I was in obviously the third base box, and um, in the summertime, I had joined that celebration on the field the first time. This time, I was mindful to just kind of step back and watch it unfold, and it was a really cool experience.
Outstanding. Well, Coach, I appreciate that. Looking into 2026 here, right? It's February 4th. Here comes the rankings. Here comes the coaches poll. Here comes all the outside noise, and I got a pretty good feeling it's trending towards a very positive Muskego light. How do you've talked about trying to reset every year and manage expectations and having the right conversations. What's your plan going into this year? How do you obviously got to go through tryouts to get your team and make those decisions. But what have you learned from your previous successes that leads you into 2026 with a pretty clear plan?
Yeah. The way I look at it is like we're starting at the bottom of the mountain again. And I know some people are going to say, "Oh, you're trying to knock Muskego off the top." And my message to our players is that we're not at the top. Like we were at the top at the end of the season last year. This is a whole new year. It's a different team. A different story is going to be written. And if you think we're starting at the top, we're already in trouble. So we're no different than any other team in terms of where we're starting, and there's still a lot to be accomplished here with a lot of these players too. We have guys coming back this year that are going to be in bigger roles. that they're excited about. So um, we have a very tough schedule to manage through. So if we're looking ahead based on what we've done in the past, um, that's going to make it just even more challenging for us. So I think the message has to be we're starting from the bottom again. And that should be an exciting message, in my opinion, because the journey of it all is just as fun as the result. So that's kind of where my mindset is. And my job, I guess, is to make sure that that's where my players are at too.
Well, beautiful. All right. Hey, just coming off of state championship and talking about 2026, I just want to pivot a little bit. A couple more questions for you. Um, you've been doing this for a long time at a very high level. What's some of the best leadership advice you've ever been given? Just as you manage, you're a fifth grade teacher and coaching for a long time, successful program. What is some of that leadership advice you've given, and maybe who's given it to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a lot of leadership lessons I've learned come more from experience, and one of them that I recognized from all the way back is the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people, and not just good baseball coaches, but I mean good people. Like if you can find good people, there are um, the coaching part. A lot of that can be taught if need be, but some of the those other things of how to work with kids and communicate well and um, show that you care. All those things are so important. And um, I think that's been one of the strengths of the program over my time is the people that have been around. Um, I've mentioned before just a couple of them, having Kyle and Josh with me for that long, and there are many others too. Like the success we've had is due to all that have been involved. There's no question about that, and a lot of this doesn't happen if you don't have the right people in place. I think that's the first thing is you have to have the right people. Um, Other things, I guess, along the way is like you can't also ask um, of others what you won't do yourself. So I can't ask more of anybody else than I'm willing to do. So I think I've learned that through not only my time in Muskego, but even before I was the head coach, that I've always had great examples of those that were the head of the program willing to put in the work, not only as much as everybody else, but more. I think that's something that has been proven to be invaluable for me. Um, and then finally, I think like just having no cracks in like your values and your expectations, like what you believe in, um, and how you feel things need to be done. And there's a lot of right ways to do things, but the way you feel is best for your program and your kids to stay true to that. Um, I think that's important too. And then when it does work out, it's more gratifying because you stuck to what you believe in.
That's fantastic. Well, we're bumping up on the hour mark here, so I'm going to ask you the $1 million Brian Kane question. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you started coaching? And this is kind of where I cut my mic and you just roll us into the outro.
Well, I would say being process driven is so much more impactful than being results driven. I think early on, there's so much focus on if you're doing things the right way or what impact you're having, maybe have been looked at as wins and losses. And now that I'm older and I've kind of been around a while and I've um, seen the impact that just athletics in general can have, the positive impact it can have on kids. Um, Making sure you understand that the process and what you are doing is more important than maybe the end result of a specific game or a specific season. Losing can make things seem worse than they are, and of course, winning sometimes covers up things that maybe shouldn't be covered up because that's what you need to work on. And just having that awareness um, of continued growth. I think that's something that I've learned over time, and it would have been nice to know a lot sooner. Um, but there's a fine line, obviously, between winning and losing, and if you're so caught up in just that W or L, you're missing out on a lot of growth opportunity, and not only to improve as a coach, but of course to help the guys improve as players and people.
And there it is. Huge thank yous out to Coach Paige for jumping on with us today. Again, looking back in the 2025 season, the ups, the downs, going into the postseason, the sectional, state tournament, right? Like every season has a story. And when that ends with a gold ball, it just makes it more and more special. Like I said, Jake's been doing this for a long time, a really, really successful program. If you ever coach against Jake, his demeanor, I think, tells you a lot about, his kind of steadiness, that calmness during a game, which, is not always the case. And I love how we had that conversation about that and, how he views his role as head coach and putting a staff together in different levels and everything else. So just a fantastic conversation. And like I said, trying to manage all the, 2026 hype, which is real, right? And what that all looks like for them and the talent pool that they have and everything else. So appreciate you tuning in. Until next time, have a great rest of your day.